consciousness must be fundamental. Consciousness and free will, because to me, free will and consciousness were parts and parcel of the same thing. So that was so clear that at that point, I wanted then to connect what I knew about physics into a theory that would connect the interiority and the exteriority.
This scientific experiment accidentally uncovered something profound about the nature of reality and possibly even God. It all began in 1801 with a simple question: what is light? Some believed it was made of tiny particles, while others argued it behaved like waves. To settle the debate, English scientist Thomas Young conducted the now famous Double-Slit Experiment, an experiment that would change our understanding of the universe forever, the wave function of reality. But Young had no idea what he was about to unleash. His experiment would not only reshape physics, but reveal something deeper, something ancient, something whispered in scriptures, mystical traditions, and spiritual revelations for thousands of years. The results of his experiment would shake the very foundation of reality, forcing scientists, philosophers, and theologians to ask a terrifying question: does consciousness create the universe? Imagine a screen with two slits cut into it. Now, take a beam of light and shine it through those slits onto a wall behind them. If light were made of tiny particles, you'd expect to see two bright lines where the particles passed through. But if light was a wave, you'd see something completely different, a spread-out interference pattern, like the ripples of a pond overlapping each other. When Young performed this experiment, the result was clear. Light behaved like a wave. It wasn't made of tiny particles, but spread out, interfering with itself. Science rejoiced. The debate was settled, or so they thought. 200 years later, when physicists revisited this experiment with modern technology, they introduced something new: observation. They placed a measuring device to track which slit each individual particle of light passed through. And then, something impossible happened. When the light was observed, it stopped behaving like a wave and acted like a particle instead. The moment someone watched, the wave collapsed into a single, definite form. Reality changed simply because someone was looking. The universe, it seemed, was not an objective place, sitting there waiting to be discovered. Instead, it was responsive, fluid, almost aware. This revelation struck at the heart of science, but it also echoed something eerily familiar: the ancient idea that consciousness creates reality. This is where things get strange. The parable of the hidden observer. In the Eastern traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, there is an ancient concept known as Maya, the idea that reality is an illusion, a dreamlike projection shaped by our own awareness. The Bible, too, speaks of how faith is the evidence of things not seen, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, suggesting that belief itself shapes what we call reality. But perhaps the most fascinating connection comes from an old Sufi parable. A wise man once told his student to look into a still lake. "What do you see?" the teacher asked. "My own reflection," the student replied. "And what happens if you disturb the water?" "The image shatters," the student said. "That is the nature of the world," the teacher explained. "It is only clear and whole when you are still. The moment you seek to grasp it, it slips through your fingers." This story, written centuries before quantum mechanics, eerily mirrors what happens in the double-slit experiment. The act of looking, of measuring, changes reality itself. Just as the lake remains still when left alone, but shifts when disturbed, the wave function collapses when observed. But if the universe changes depending on whether or not it's being watched, then who or what is doing the ultimate watching? As physicists probed deeper into quantum mechanics, they faced an unsettling truth. Matter, at its most fundamental level, is not solid, Atoms, the building blocks of reality, are 99.9999% empty space. The electrons within them don't exist as tiny, solid balls, but as probabilities until they are measured. But probabilities of what? Until someone observes them, they exist in a superposition. They are neither here nor there, but everywhere at once. It's only when a conscious observer looks that they choose a single position. This led some of the greatest minds in physics, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and Werner Heisenberg, to wonder if consciousness itself is the key to reality. If an electron exists in all possible places until it is observed, then doesn't that imply the entire universe may only exist because it is being observed? Could it be that consciousness is not in the universe? Consciousness is the universe? If this is true, then the question of God takes a radical new form. God as the ultimate observer. In many religious traditions, God is described as the all-seeing eye, the eternal witness who observes all things. The Bible in Proverbs chapter 15 verse 3 says, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good." Hinduism speaks of Brahman, the infinite consciousness that observes all reality into existence. If observation collapses the wave function of the universe, then is it possible that God is the ultimate observer, the infinite consciousness that holds reality in place? And if so, what does that mean for us? What happens when we stop seeing ourselves as separate from that consciousness and instead recognize that we are part of the very awareness that shapes the universe? The double-slit experiment was supposed to explain the nature of light. Instead, it cracked open a door to something much greater, something that suggests we are more than flesh and bone, something that hints that the universe is alive. If everything exists as mere probabilities until it is observed, then how is anything connected at all? How do things hold together? To answer that, we must look at something even stranger than the double-slit experiment, a discovery that shattered our understanding of time, space, and even separation itself. A discovery that whispers a secret so ancient, so deeply embedded in our myths and spiritual traditions, that it may finally explain why everything in the universe is one. It's called quantum entanglement, and it may be the closest thing to proof that God is not only watching, but that God is within everything. Picture two particles, once part of the same whole, but now separated by vast distances, one on Earth, the other beyond the edge of the solar system. Logic tells us they should behave independently. After all, how could one affect the other when they are light years apart? But reality doesn't work that way. When two particles become entangled, they are no longer separate. If you change the state of one, the other reacts instantly, as if an invisible thread binds them together across the void of space. Not at the speed of light, not with any delay, instantly. Einstein called this phenomenon spooky action at a distance. He didn't believe it at first. It seemed too absurd, too impossible. Yet experiment after experiment confirmed it. Entangled particles defy the limits of space and time. What does this mean? It means that at the deepest level, separation is an illusion. The universe is not made of individual, isolated pieces. It is a web, a single interconnected whole, bound by an invisible force science still cannot fully explain. But mystics, prophets, and ancient sages have spoken of this force for thousands of years. Throughout history, spiritual traditions have described reality as an interconnected unity. Hinduism speaks of Indra's net, an infinite web where every node reflects all others, just like entangled particles reflecting each other's state, no matter how far apart. The Bible declares, "In him we live and move and have our being." Acts chapter 17 verse 28. a striking parallel to the idea that we are all woven into a single divine presence. In Taoism, the concept of the Tao describes an unseen force that connects all things, moving through every aspect of existence, much like quantum entanglement suggests an invisible link between particles across the universe. Could it be that quantum mechanics is simply revealing what the mystics always knew? And if entanglement exists at the smallest level of reality, could it also apply to us? If two tiny particles can be forever connected, what about human beings? What about our thoughts, emotions, and even our souls? Experiments have shown that human brains exhibit synchronized activity even when miles apart. When two people form a deep emotional bond, their heart rates and brain waves can literally sync up, even if they're in different locations. Studies on meditation groups have revealed something even stranger. When one group of people focuses on sending positive intentions to another, measurable changes occur in the recipient's body, even if they are completely unaware of it. Could this be a form of human entanglement? If so, it would mean that we are not separate beings, drifting alone in an empty universe. It would mean that we are all, on some level, connected in ways deeper than we can comprehend. This would explain why acts of kindness ripple outward, why love transcends distance, and why certain people seem to be on the same wavelength without ever speaking. It would also mean something else. If we are all entangled, then we are all connected to something greater. The cosmic consciousness. This is where science and spirituality meet in the most profound way. If particles are connected beyond space and time, and if consciousness collapses the wave function of reality, then could there be an ultimate consciousness, an infinite mind that binds the universe together? God is seen as more than a distant creator. God is described as the consciousness that holds everything in existence. In Buddhism, enlightenment is the realization that the self is an illusion, that everything is interconnected in one vast awareness. In Christianity, Christ speaks of the kingdom of God within you in Luke chapter 17, verse 21, suggesting that divinity is not somewhere else. It is part of us, entangled within our very being. In the Upanishads, an ancient Hindu text, it is written, "That which is the finest essence, this whole world has that as its soul. That is reality. That is the self, that thou art." These teachings echo the discoveries of quantum mechanics, that there is no true separation. Consciousness plays a fundamental role in reality, and everything exists within a greater unified whole. Could it be that we are not just living in the universe, but that we are part of the very awareness that creates it? The implications are staggering. If quantum entanglement is real, and if consciousness is woven into the fabric of existence, then what we think, feel, and believe may have far greater consequences than we realize. If our minds are connected to each other and to the universe itself, then prayer, meditation, and intention might not just be symbolic acts. They might be real forces shaping reality, just as observation collapses the wave function in quantum experiments. This would mean that when we love, when we forgive, when we choose kindness over fear, we are not just making personal choices. We are aligning with the fundamental nature of reality itself, a nature that is deeply connected, conscious, and alive, a nature that many have called God. Death is an illusion. If quantum physics has shown us that reality is deeply connected, that consciousness collapses the wave function, and that entanglement defies time and space, then a profound question arises. What happens when we die? The greatest mystery of human existence, the question that every philosopher, religion, and civilization has tried to answer, might not be as mysterious as we think. What if death is just a transition? What if consciousness, our awareness, our very essence, does not end but merely moves into another form, another state of being? Science is beginning to uncover evidence that suggests death is not the end. And if that is true, then what we call God may not only be the force that binds reality together, but also the presence that awaits us on the other side. For centuries, materialists believed that consciousness is nothing more than a byproduct of the brain, like steam rising from boiling water. When the brain shuts down, consciousness disappears. But this idea is being challenged. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, and physicist Sir Roger Penrose, developed the Ork-OR theory, a radical idea that suggests consciousness does not arise from the brain, but instead exists in the quantum realm. Their theory proposes that tiny structures in our brain cells, called microtubules, act as quantum processors, tapping into a universal field of consciousness beyond time and space. If this is true, then consciousness does not die when the body dies. It simply returns to the quantum field, to the fundamental awareness that exists everywhere, in everything. Could this be what religions have always described as the soul's journey to the afterlife? Thousands of people who have been declared clinically dead, only to be revived, report astonishingly similar experiences. They describe a feeling of floating above their body, seeing doctors and loved ones from a detached perspective, traveling through a tunnel of light, being embraced by a presence of infinite love, and receiving knowledge beyond human comprehension. Dr. Raymond Moody, a pioneer in the study of near-death experiences, found that these experiences are not hallucinations, as even blind people report seeing vivid details during their NDEs. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, conducted a 20-year study of NDEs in patients who were declared medically dead. His conclusion is that consciousness exists beyond the brain. The tunnel of light, the feeling of unity, the encounter with a divine presence, these are not fantasies. They are glimpses into a larger reality, a reality where death is not the end, but a return home. Imagine a caterpillar crawling along a leaf. It has no concept of flying. To the caterpillar, transformation means only one thing: death. Then, one day, it enters the cocoon. From the caterpillar's perspective, everything is ending. It dissolves. It loses itself. But from a higher perspective, something miraculous is happening. It is becoming something greater. The same is true for us. Death may seem like an ending, but what if it is simply the moment we emerge from our limited perspective, like a butterfly spreading its wings for the first time? Every spiritual tradition speaks of this transformation. In Christianity, Jesus speaks of eternal life, saying, "In my Father's house are many rooms," in John chapter 14, verse 2. In Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita states, "Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be." In Buddhism, death is not an end, but a passage into another form, another expression of the universal consciousness. What science now suggests is that these teachings may not just be metaphors, they may be descriptions of reality itself. Quantum immortality. Some scientists believe that death may not exist the way we think it does. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every possible outcome happens in a different version of reality. What does this mean for death? It means that consciousness never truly ceases. Instead, it may simply shift to another version of existence, a new timeline, a new reality where we continue. Dr. Hugh Everett III, the physicist who first proposed this idea, believed that death is just an illusion of perspective, that consciousness always finds a way forward. Could it be that what we call heaven is simply the continuation of awareness in a higher state? If consciousness never dies, then maybe we never truly die either. If the mind is eternal, then so is the journey beyond it. We are never truly separated from those we love. Many people who have had near-death experiences report encountering deceased loved ones, not as ghosts, but as radiant living beings. They describe an overwhelming sense of recognition, love, and belonging. Is it possible that when we die, we return to those we have lost? That death is not a permanent goodbye, but merely a doorway through which we step back into the arms of those who have gone before us. Science is now beginning to suggest that this is not just wishful thinking, it may be woven into the very nature of existence itself. We began this journey with a scientific experiment, the double-slit test that revealed the strange power of consciousness. Now we see that this mystery goes even deeper. Consciousness collapses reality. Consciousness exists beyond the body. Consciousness may never truly end. If all of this is true, then God is not distant, not separate from us. God is the consciousness that binds everything together. God is the field in which our awareness exists, and when we die, we do not disappear. We return to the source, the light, the infinite, the language of the universe. If quantum mechanics has shown us that consciousness shapes reality, if near-death experiences suggest that awareness transcends the body, and if ancient wisdom and modern science are converging on the idea that death is not the end, then one question becomes more urgent than ever. If our consciousness is part of something greater, then can we communicate with it? And if so, has it already been speaking to us this whole time? Throughout history, people have claimed to receive messages from the universe. Prophets heard voices that revealed great truths. Mystics received visions of the divine. Scientists had breakthroughs that seemed to come from nowhere. But what if this is not mystical imagination? What if reality itself is conscious and trying to communicate with us? The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, once said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness." If consciousness is the foundation of reality, then perhaps we are always in a dialogue with the universe. But are we listening? Have you ever thought of someone only for them to call you moments later? Have you ever stumbled upon exactly the right book, the right phrase, the right piece of knowledge, just when you needed it most? Swiss psychologist Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity. The idea that reality is not random, but filled with meaningful coincidences. Jung believed that our subconscious mind is connected to a larger, universal mind, a field of intelligence that we are constantly interacting with, whether we realize it or not. The ancient Greeks called this intelligence logos, the divine order behind existence. Hindus call it Brahman, the infinite consciousness from which all things arise. Buddhists call it the Dharmakaya, the formless awareness behind reality. What if synchronicity is not coincidence but communication? What if reality is speaking to us, guiding us, nudging us, if only we paid attention? The science of intuition. This is your intuition, often dismissed as just a feeling. But science is beginning to prove otherwise. Studies show that the heart picks up information before the brain does. In experiments at the HeartMath Institute, participants were shown random images, some peaceful, some disturbing. The shocking discovery: the participants' heart rates changed a few seconds before the disturbing images appeared, before they even saw them. Their bodies sensed the future. If reality is truly connected at a fundamental level, then perhaps our intuition is not irrational, Perhaps it is the language of the universe, our direct line to the greater consciousness that binds all things. And if that is true, then maybe, just maybe, we have the ability to ask questions and receive answers. For thousands of years, people have believed that prayer and meditation allow them to connect with something greater. But is this just faith? Or is there a deeper science behind it? Dr. Andrew Newberg, a neuroscientist, has studied the brains of people in deep prayer and meditation. His findings are astonishing. When people enter deep states of spiritual connection, a part of the brain called the parietal lobe, responsible for our sense of self, shuts down. This means that in moments of deep connection, the brain stops perceiving itself as separate from the universe. The illusion of separation dissolves, and for those experiencing it, this moment is indescribable peace. Could it be that in these moments, we are not just imagining contact with God, but actually making it? A young traveler once climbed a sacred mountain to meet a wise teacher. "Master," he asked, "how can I hear the voice of God?" The teacher smiled and took him to a quiet place. "Listen," he said. The traveler strained his ears, but all he heard was silence. "I hear nothing," he said. The master shook his head. "Now, listen again, but this time, be still." The traveler closed his eyes, calmed his breath, and listened again. This time, he heard the wind. It was always there, but his own noise had drowned it out. The master spoke. "God does not shout. God whispers. It is not that God is silent. It is that we are too loud." What if the universe has been speaking to you your entire life, in the quiet moments when your heart suddenly knows what to do, in the synchronicities that seem too perfect to be random, in the dreams that feel more real than waking life, in the intuition that tells you where to go, what to say, who to trust? If reality is conscious, if everything is connected, then you are never alone. The universe is not just something you live in, it is something you are in conversation with. And when you begin to listen, you may realize that it has been answering you all along. The power of thought. If we are in a conversation with the universe, if synchronicities, intuition, and deep states of awareness connect us to something greater, if quantum mechanics has already shown that observation affects reality, then the next question is inevitable. Can we consciously shape the world around us? Can thought itself create, influence, and transform reality? And if so, are miracles real? For centuries, spiritual traditions have insisted that thoughts are not just passive reactions to the world, but active forces that shape it. Buddhism teaches that our thoughts create our reality, a concept known as dependent origination. Christianity says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Hinduism speaks of Maya, the illusion shaped by our perceptions and beliefs. Hermetic philosophy declares, all is mind, the universe is mental. But is this just poetic metaphor, or could it be literal? Science may have found the answer. Doctors have long been baffled by the placebo effect, when people heal from illnesses simply because they believe they are receiving medicine, even if the pill contains nothing. But what if this effect is not just a trick of the mind? What if belief itself is an untapped force? In a famous study, patients with severe knee pain were split into two groups. One group received real knee surgery. The other group had a fake surgery. Doctors made an incision but did nothing inside. The shocking result? The patients who received fake surgery recovered just as well as those who had real surgery. Their belief alone healed them. If thought can heal the body, could it also shape the world around us? In 1998, a team of scientists led by Dr. William Broad set up a bizarre experiment. They placed living organisms, small fish, inside a tank of water. Then they asked people, in another room, to focus their thoughts on slowing the movement of the fish. The result is that the fish's movements physically slowed down. Their behavior changed, not because of any physical force, but because of human thought alone. The implications were staggering. If thoughts can influence living beings, could they influence other things too? This led to an even more astonishing discovery: the Global Consciousness Project. A group of researchers at Princeton University wanted to test whether human thought could affect random events. They placed random number generators all over the world, machines designed to spit out sequences of completely unpredictable numbers. If reality was purely mechanical, nothing should affect these numbers. But something did. Whenever global events triggered deep emotional responses, the events of 2001, natural disasters, major tragedies, the numbers became less random. Somehow, the emotions of millions of people were subtly influencing machines. Consciousness was bending the laws of probability. If mass human emotion can affect reality on a small scale, could focused thought do it deliberately? Religions have long claimed that prayer can change reality, but is there evidence? In 1988, Dr. Randolph Bird conducted a study on the effects of prayer on hospital patients. One group of patients prayed for it. The other group was not. Neither group knew they were being studied. The result is the prayed-for group had significantly fewer complications, fewer deaths, and faster recoveries. Yet there was no physical reason for the difference. Skeptics called it a coincidence. But other studies repeated the results. Could focused thought, whether through prayer, meditation, or intention, have the power to reshape reality itself? A wise teacher once told this story. Two men decided to build houses. The first man built his house on rock, laying each brick with care. The second man built his house on sand, rushing to finish. One day, a storm came. The house on sand collapsed, but the house on rock stood firm. The students asked, "Master, what does this mean?" The teacher replied, "The rock is faith, the unshakable belief in what you wish to build. The sand is doubt, the weak foundation that crumbles under fear. Whatever you build in life, your dreams, your health, your happiness, it must stand on belief." If quantum physics has shown that consciousness shapes reality, if prayer and intention have been scientifically linked to healing and change, if the universe is not just passive but responds to focused thought, then what does this mean for you? It means you are not powerless. You are constantly shaping your world, whether you realize it or not. Every thought, every belief, and every expectation is a brushstroke on the canvas of reality. Every emotion, every fear, every hope is rippling into the unseen fabric of existence. Every moment, you are either creating by intention or creating by default. What if the so-called miracles of saints, mystics, and healers were not supernatural, but simply people who understood how to use this power? We have seen how consciousness bends reality, how observation changes the material world, and how thought itself might be the unseen architect of existence. But this leads to an even deeper mystery. What happens when we die? If consciousness is not just a byproduct of the brain, but something greater, could it survive beyond death? And if it does, where does it go? The final threshold. What happens when we die? For centuries, religious texts, spiritual traditions, and personal testimonies have insisted that death is not the end. Buddhism describes bardo, the transitional state between lives. Hinduism speaks of the Atman, the eternal self that is reborn. Christianity and Islam describe the soul's journey to another plane of existence. But could there be real evidence that consciousness does not die? Could science have already proven, without realizing it, that death is not the end, but a doorway? Throughout history, thousands of people have reported eerily similar experiences after being declared clinically dead. They describe floating outside their bodies, looking down at doctors struggling to revive them. They recall moving through tunnels of light, feeling overwhelming peace, encountering beings made of pure energy, and receiving knowledge beyond human comprehension. Many return with details of events that occurred while they were dead, conversations they could not have heard, sights they could not have seen. One of the most famous cases is that of Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who once dismissed near-death experiences as hallucinations. But when he contracted bacterial meningitis and slipped into a coma, he had an experience that shattered his skepticism. He reported traveling through realms beyond physical reality, meeting a luminous being who communicated with him telepathically, and being told that the universe is not a cold, mechanical system, but a place of love and consciousness. When he awoke, he was forever changed. Skeptics argue that these visions are just the dying brain's final sparks of activity. But if that were true, why do so many people return with verified information? Why do blind people report seeing for the first time during their near-death experiences? Why do young children who have never been exposed to religious teachings describe the same phenomena as adults from entirely different cultures? In 1991, Pam Reynolds underwent a dangerous brain surgery that required doctors to stop her heart and drain the blood from her brain. She was clinically dead. Yet when she was revived, she described details of the operation with stunning accuracy, details she could not have seen because her eyes were taped shut and her ears were covered. She even described hearing conversations between doctors at a time when no brain activity was present. Her experience shook the medical community. If she was dead with no working brain, how did she perceive anything at all? Dr. Stuart Hameroff and physicist Sir Roger Penrose propose a radical theory that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but received by it, like a radio signal. They suggest that consciousness exists at the quantum level, within tiny structures called microtubules inside brain cells. When the body dies, they believe, consciousness simply detaches and returns to the quantum field. If this is true, then the brain is not the source of consciousness, it is only a temporary receiver. And when the receiver dies, the signal continues elsewhere. This idea echoes ancient spiritual teachings. Hindu philosophy speaks of the Akashic records, an eternal field of consciousness where all thoughts, experiences, and souls reside. Some physicists now describe something similar, the quantum vacuum, an unseen realm of pure energy and information that might be the foundation of reality itself. Could this be what people have been calling God? A field of infinite intelligence containing all that has ever been and all that ever will be. A wave rose from the ocean, full of energy and movement, but as it approached the shore it became afraid. "I am going to crash," it said. "I will be destroyed." Another wave beside it replied, "You are not just a wave, you are the ocean." The first wave suddenly understood. It had never been separate from the ocean, it had only believed it was. If consciousness does not die, then perhaps death is only an illusion. Like a wave returning to the ocean, we do not end. We simply merge back into something greater. Scientific studies on reincarnation. If consciousness survives death, could it also return in new forms? Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, spent decades studying young children who claimed to remember past lives. He documented thousands of cases where children, often as young as 3 years old, recalled specific details about people they had never met, places they had never been, and events that occurred before they were born. In many cases, their statements were verified. Families they described were found, locations they mentioned existed, and their memories matched real historical events. One striking case was that of James Leininger, a young boy who, at the age of 2, began having nightmares about dying in a plane crash. He gave his parents detailed descriptions of a World War II pilot named James Houston. He knew the name of the aircraft carrier Houston served on, the type of plane he flew, and even the name of another pilot who had flown with him. His parents, initially skeptical, investigated and discovered that everything their son said was historically accurate. James had no way of knowing these things, unless somehow he had lived them before. If consciousness is not bound by the body, then we are not just physical beings, we are something far greater. If thought shapes reality, then our lives are not accidents, they are expressions of something intentional. If death is not the end, then fear itself is an illusion. And if all consciousness is connected, then we are never truly separate from one another, or from the force we call God. If consciousness is eternal, if thought shapes reality, if the universe is not dead matter but an intelligent force responding to us, then what is the purpose of all this? Why do we exist? Is there a reason for suffering, love, growth, and death? And if everything is connected, what is the hidden truth the universe has been trying to tell us? The final revelation. Why are we here? For thousands of years, religions and philosophies have attempted to answer this question. Buddhism speaks of enlightenment, escaping suffering through self-awareness. Hinduism teaches that the soul is on a journey to reunite with the Brahman, the ultimate consciousness. Christianity and Islam describe life as a test, a preparation for something beyond. Yet across all these beliefs, one truth keeps appearing. Life is not random. It is a school, a lesson, a masterpiece being painted through experience. In 2012, physicists conducted an experiment that shocked the scientific world. They demonstrated a phenomenon known as quantum entanglement, where two particles, no matter how far apart, remain connected. When one is changed, the other reacts instantly, even across galaxies. Albert Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. But it suggests something incredible. If everything was once part of the same singularity, the moment before the Big Bang, then everything in the universe is still connected, not metaphorically, literally. This means you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself from a unique point of view. Your thoughts ripple outward. Your emotions shape reality. Your very existence is a conversation with something greater. If this is true, then could the struggles of life, pain, loss, growth, be part of a much bigger process? A young student approached a wise sculptor and asked, "How do you create such beautiful statues from stone?" The sculptor smiled and said, "I do not create them. The statue is already inside the stone. I simply remove everything that is not it." If life is a journey of consciousness refining itself, then our struggles, mistakes, and losses are not punishments. They are the chisel shaping the sculpture, revealing something greater within us. Across nature, there is a pattern that repeats endlessly, the golden ratio, a mathematical sequence that appears in galaxies, hurricanes, DNA, and the spirals of seashells. Everything grows according to this unseen blueprint. If the universe itself follows a pattern, could human life have a pattern too? Ancient cultures believed in something called the hero's journey, the idea that every soul is on a path of transformation. In myths and religions, the hero always faces struggle, death, and rebirth before reaching their highest self. But what if this is not just a story? What if our lives follow this same structure, each hardship pushing us towards something greater, each fall leading to a new beginning? Science even supports this idea. Neuroscientists have found that the brain is constantly rewiring itself, growing through challenges. Psychologists have discovered that post-traumatic growth, becoming wiser, stronger, and more compassionate after suffering, is not just possible, but common. The universe, it seems, has built transformation into its very fabric. If consciousness creates reality, if we are all connected, if life is a journey of refinement, where struggle reveals our true nature, then what is the message behind it all? The hidden message of life. Religions call it love, science calls it unity, quantum physics calls it entanglement. But no matter what name it goes by, the truth is the same. We are part of something vast, intelligent, and purposeful. We are here to experience, to grow, to create, and to remember that we are never truly separate from the divine force that breathes through everything. Perhaps this is why those who have near-death experiences describe one overwhelming truth, that at the core of all existence is love. Not love as emotion, but as the very structure of reality itself. The force that binds atoms, moves galaxies, and gives life meaning. The world is not something happening to you. It is something that happens through you. You are not just a passive observer. You are a creator, shaping your experience with every thought, belief, and action. The ancient mystics, the greatest scientists, and the most enlightened beings all reached the same conclusion. The universe is not separate from you. You are the universe. And perhaps, just perhaps, the thing we have been calling God has never been something outside of us, but the very consciousness within us, waiting to be remembered. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.